초콜릿은 달콤해 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 오렌지는 상큼해 상큼해 상큼해.
Good day to each and everyone. For today's discussion, we tackle about utilization of assessment data. So before that, our learning objectives. At the end of this lesson, the students are expected to identify terms related to utilization of assessment data, analyze the different types of test scores, differentiate between norm reference framework and criterion reference framework. Last is the examine the basic concepts and principles of the different types of test interpretation. Instructional decisions are made to identify students' instructional needs. This is a general education initiative and focuses on instruction by using about students' responses to past instruction to guide future educational decisions. Decisions are proactive approaches of providing early assistance to students with instructional needs and matching the number of resources to the nature of the student's needs. So, the utilization of assessment data shows the chances of students achieving all available grades in each subject, so that teachers can set evidence-based expectations for individual students and for classes. Also, it helps to the teachers and students stay on track for the base outcomes. Types of test scores. First is the row and percentage score. Row score is obtained by simply counting the number of correct answers in a test. Percentage score is a mathematical quantity which is written out of a total of 100. The symbol used to represent the percentage is percent. So here are the percentage score formula. Test row score divided by total number of items. Then the answer is 2. We will multiply to 100 equals percent. So the example here is, if your score in your test is 80, then the total number of items is 100. So your row score is 80. We're going to divide into 100, which is 100 is the total number of items. 80 divided by 100 is 0.8. And 0.8 times 100, which is 80. So your percentage score is 80%. So next, if you get it, let's proceed to the next, which is the percentile ranking. Percentile ranking is defined as the percentage of values found under the specific values. Percentiles are mostly used in the ranking system. It is based on dividing up the normal distribution of the values. Percentile is represented as XTH, where X is a number. Percentile ranking formula. Total number of scores or values below number of X divided by total number of scores or values. Then the answer is we're going to multiply into 100. So example, data set. We have 75, 80, 85, 90, and 95. The question is, what is the percentile ranking of 85? So, percentile ranking of X equals the number of values below x over n times 100. Take note, the percentile ranks are the ranks, not the scores. So let's PR of 85 equals 2 over 5 times 100. The two which the scores below the 85, which is the 75 and 80. Then the 5 which is pila sila tanan. Ani ang 75, 80, 85, 90, and 95. So, percentile ranking of 85 equals 0.4, which is 2 divided by 5 equals 0.4 times 100 equals 40%, which is the percentile rank of 85.
Good morning, class. I am Jovelyn in Lakaya. Today, I will continue to discuss one of the types of score, which is the standard score. So what do you mean by the standard score? The standard score is a derived score which utilizes the normal curve to show how the test taker's performance compares with the distribution of score. So, we all know that it is difficult to use raw scores when making comparisons between groups and different tests, considering that tests may have different levels of difficulty. So an example of this is a test from a math and Filipino subject. Do you agree that these two subjects have different levels of difficulty? Yes, it is. So let's say if the student got 40 over 50 in Filipino subject, while in mathematics the student got 25 over 50. We can compare these two raw scores because they are different. So as you may have noticed, the students have different strength and capacity on different fields. So how can we determine and make comparison of these two raw scores? So we can make comparison and determine by using a derived score. So what is a derived score? A derived score are a family of score that allow us to make comparisons between test scores. So as for my example, we can make comparison these two raw scores from different subject by using this derived score. So the derived score have two types, which are scores of relative standing and developmental scores. So scores of relative standing includes percentile, standard score, and the stanines. And the developmental scores are scores that have been transformed from raw scores and reflect the average performance at age and grade levels. So before I proceed in discussing about the types of score of relative standing and developmental score, I will show to you an example of normal curve distribution. So as you can see on the screen, it is an example of normal curve distribution of standard deviation. So here we have our mean, which is 0 in the middle, and on the right side we can see the positive value, and the left side we can see the negative value. So there we can also see the cumulative percentages, percentiles, z-scores, t-scores, standard 9 or stanines, and the percentage in stanine. So later on we will dig deeper what are these types. So now we will discuss the different types of standard scores of relative standing. First is the z-score. Z-score gives the number of standard deviation of a t-score above or below the mean. So here we can see the formula of the z-score. The formula is z equals x minus mean over s, where x is the test score, mean is the average score, and s is the standard deviation. So a negative z-score means it is below the average, while a positive z-score means it is above the average. So we have an example of normal curve. So the mean here is 0. So if we get the z-score below the mean, it means that it is negative. Likewise, if we get a positive z-score, it means above the mean. Means above the mean. So for example, scores on a history test have average of 80 with standard deviation of 6. What is the z-score for a student who earned a 75 on the test? So our given here is row score equals 75, mean equals 80, standard deviation equals 6. So z equals x minus mean over s. So z equals 75 minus 80 over 6. And z is equals to negative 0.83. So for the interpretation, the person scored negative 0.83 standard deviations below the mean. So our z score is below the mean because we have the negative z score. So next is the t score. A t score, aka t value, is equivalent to the number of standard deviations away from the mean of the t distribution. So the t score is the test statistic used in t-test and regression test. It can also be used to describe how far from the mean and observation to a t-distribution. In a t-score scale, the mean is set to 50 instead of 0 and the standard deviation is 10. To transform a z-score to a t-score, we multiply the z-score by 10 and add by 50. So t equals 10z plus 50. And before getting the t-score, we will get the z-score first. Earlier, we got the z-score, so we will use it in getting the t-score. So to transform the z-score into t-score, we will use the formula of the t-score, which is t equals 10z plus 50. So our given is z-score equals negative 0.83. So here is the solution. T equals 10z plus 50. T equals 10 times our z-score, which is negative 0.83 plus 50. T equals 8.3 plus 50. So our t-score equals 41.7. So next is the STA9 or Standard 9. It is a method of scaling scores on a 9-point scale. So a STA9 is a 9-point grading scale weighing from 1 to 9. So unlike a z-score and t-score, the mean of STA9 is 5 and the standard deviation is 2. So it can be used to convert any test score to a single-digit score. It is a method for scaling test score from 1 to 9, which 1 is the lowest and the mean is 5 and 9 is the highest. Here I have a chart of normal curve. So if the score pertains 1 to 3, it is below the average. And if it pertains 4 to 6, it is average. And 7 to 9, it is above the average. So the formula that we will use in getting the standard 9 is STA9 equals 2 times z-score plus 5. So kanang pare-pareho lang ang t-score and the standard 9 ag formula. So a while ago, we converted our z-score into t-score, but we will convert our z-score into But now we will convert our z-score into standard 9 using the formula, which is STA9 equals 2 times z-score plus 5. So our given is our z-score earlier, which is negative 0.83. So STA9 equals 2z plus 5. STA9 equals 2 times negative 0.83 plus 5. STA9 equals 1.66 plus 5. STA9 equals 3.34. So our STA9 score is 3.34 if our z-score is negative 0.83. So next, I am going to show to you a table or z-table. This table provides an easy conversion between the standard score and finding the associated percentile rank. So this mathematical table also allows us to know the percentage values of a z-score in a standard normal distribution. So how to use the z-table? To use the z-table, first go down the row with the first 2 digits of your z-score. Second, go across to the column with the same third digit as your z-score. And third, find the value of the intersection of the row and column from the previous steps. So next is the normal curve equivalent. It is a normalized standard score within the range 1 to 99. It has a mean of 50 and a standard deviation of 21.06. Actually, this normal curve equivalent is similar to the percentile rank and also relates to the stanine. Here we have a chart. So as you can see in the first, we have a standard deviation, and the middle, the orange one, we have normal curve equivalent, and lastly we have percentile equivalence. So what do you have noticed? As we can observe, no, there is a similarities of a normal curve equivalent and percentile equivalent. So they are both range 1 to 99. The next is the developmental scores. So developmental scores is a grade equivalent, describes a learner's development growth. So it defines a person's performance in terms of the average of particular group's performance. So for example, age equivalent and grade equivalent. It gives a picture as to where he or she is an achievement continuum. It is also called a grade equivalent because it uses grade of school. So let's say example, first grade, third grade, fourth grade, and so on. So it is a measurement of a student's advancement. So grade equivalent expressed as a decimal number. For example, if a second grader obtained a grade equivalent to 4.2 in language mechanics, 4.2 is our grade equivalent. So it means his or her score is typical of a fourth grader 2 months into instruction. So the digit to the left of the decimal, which is 4, is represent the grade, while the digit to the right of the decimal represent the month. So according to Fretchling and Meyerberg, 1983, GE is an estimate of a learner's location in the development continuum and not the grade level where he or she should be placed. Analogous to grade equivalence or age equivalent score, they are interpreted similarly. For instance, if a child's score in reading comprehension is equal to an age equivalent of 7.6 years, it means that the child's raw score is equal to the average score of the children 7 years and 6 months in the norm group who took the test. So developmental scores like grade and age equivalent the developmental scores like grade and age equivalence promote typological thinking. So typological thinking refers to categorizing abilities and performance by age or grade without due consideration to variations. So that's all for my discussions about the standard score. So I hope you learned something from my discussion. So thank you for listening and watching. I will give the floor to Miss Lorna Oderve. Thank you.
Methods of interpreting these scores. What is a referencing framework? A referencing framework is a structure you can use to compare a student's performance to something external to the assessment itself. So first, we have norm referencing framework or norm reference framework. So the term norm originated from Latin word norma, which means the rule or perceive. So the norm referencing framework is the student's progress to others in their peer group. Also, it is a standardized test that assesses competency using norms to interpret and report scores. So in norm referencing framework, we have advantages. So first is the shows who needs specific educational needs in a class. Second, generally appropriate in a large course. Third is the work well in situations requiring rigid differentiation among students. So, in norm referencing framework is naay advantage which is makadabang sad to differentiate students and identify those who may have specific educational needs or deficits that require specialized assistance or learning environments. So, if we have advantage, also we have disadvantages. So first, usually valid only with the population they had been norm. Second, individuals' achievement is also determined by the achievement of others. So they cannot measure progress of the population as a whole only where individuals fall within the whole. So assessment instruments under norm reference evaluation. So first, teacher-made survey test. Second, standardized aptitude and achievement test. Third, adjustment inventories. Fourth, college entrance exam. And fifth is IQ test. So we have an example here of norm reference test scoring. Two sets of score for two sections of 10 students out of 100 items. So in set A is the score of 30, 40, 50, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, and 95. And to the set B, we have 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, 100. Take note. We have 5 guidelines when we interpreting norm reference test scores. First, detect any unexpected pattern of scores. Second, determine the reasons for score patterns. Third, do not expect surprises for every student. Fourth, small differences in subtest scores should be viewed as chance fluctuations. Fifth is use information from various assessments and observations to explain performance and other assessments.
Number 2. Criterion Referencing Framework or Criterion Reference Framework. The term criterion comes from the Greek word criterion which means standard. So we all know nga every teacher na agad standard, diba? And as a student, you need to reach that or meet. And second, give meaning to scores of tests by describing what the learner can and cannot do in the light of a standard. So, muhatag og comment ang teacher sa scores. Pilay nako ang score sa ilang estudyante, di ba? And scores in tests allow for absolute interpretations and not comparative. So, by kanang makabaw ng maisa or ligo man nilag checking ano sa scores, then ana nila maka-interpret sila sa ilang unsay progress sa ilang estudyante. Then last, in a relationship to a predetermined criterion of mastery, performance of learner is explained. Uses of criterion reference tests. First, classroom teachers use them to monitor student performance in their day-to-day activities. Second, states find them useful for evaluating students' performance and generating educational accountability information at the classroom, school, district, and state levels. So why it is important to evaluate the students' performance? It is because student assessment enable instructor to measure the effectiveness of their teaching by linking student performance to specific learning objectives. And as a result, teachers are able to institutionalize effective teaching choices and revise ineffective ones in their pedagogy. 3. Third, to provide basis for determining how much is being learned by student and how well educational is producing desired results. And fourth, in training program is to assist learning. 5. The credentialing field to determine persons qualified to receive a license or certificate. Assessments that generate criterion reference interpretations. Skill test. A skill test is an assessment used to provide an unbiased, validated evaluations of a candidate's ability to perform the duties listed in the job description. Driving test. A driving test is a procedure designed to test a person's ability to drive a motor vehicle. Next is TESDA National Certificates or NC or Certificate of Competency. So TESDA stands for Technical Education and Skills Develop Authority. Next is competency test. A competency test or competency assessment is the formal measurement of an employee's capabilities mapped against the requirements of their jobs. And last, licensure examinations. Examples of criterion reference test scoring. In a class of 100 students, no one might get a grade of excellence if no one scores 98 above or 85 above depending on the criterion used. So 1.0 is excellent and it is equal to 98 to 100 or 85 to 100. Then 1.5 is also good and it is equal to 89 to 97 or 80 to 84. 2.0 average, it is equal to 75 to 87 or 70 to 79. 3.0 is poor and pass and it is equal to 65 to 74 or 66 to 69. 5.0 is failure and it is equal to below 65 or below 60. Advantages. The advantages of criterion reference test is the performance of the students will not be affected by the performance of the whole class. Next is it promotes cooperation among the students. And all students may pass the subject or course when they meet the standards set by the teacher. And the disadvantages is it is difficult to our reasonable standards if it is not stated in the grading policies of the institutions. And last, most experienced faculty set criteria based on their knowledge of how students usually perform.
Listen back,